Great. Thanks for joining us after the
Thanks,
conclusion of everything here. Looking at what you guys did this year, obviously the results of the first half of the season aren't something I'm sure you want to revisit a whole bunch. But looking at the roster decisions that were made today, how do you feel like you guys are sort of correcting a little bit of course from what you did earlier in the season?
Yeah. Well, I think some of the process through the season was a little bit getting healthy. A little bit is obviously you miss Ricky in a normal world. Ricky will be back next year. But then it's the impact of missing Ricky and the couple guys early on that we missed who played big roles in our team the year before, along with bringing in newer players who were going to need time to adapt, plus missing a Joe in the beginning of the season who plays such a specific role for us in terms of space creation and running and doing things like that. Ricky and a guy who changes the tempo of the game and the speed of the game. So I think a lot in the beginning of the season was with these types of guys missing, what was our evolution as a team going to be to continue to be dangerous, all those kinds of things. And the other part was just the defensive part of it. We conceded way too many goals, way too easily. So I think as the season progressed, we saw with Joe getting healthy, with other pieces kind of coming together, that we did have some stability inside of the group. And we saw that with more consistent results through the second half of the field, half the season, a good Leagues Cup. But still, there's still areas that we have to improve upon, and whether that's clear today based on the decisions, or that's going to hopefully become clear through the process, because the roster you have today isn't the roster you'll start with next year. So hopefully it's going to continue to evolve, but we have to be a much more resilient team defensively. We can't concede as many goals and as easy as we did and think that we're going to find consistent results. It's difficult. And I think we've got to get more production in certain areas of our field and more stability in certain area of field. We have 3 nines. Between them, we had 7 goals. And so with the way, especially with Ricky on the field, that we can create chances, that's a position that's going to really benefit from that as well. It needs to be a place where we get goals from. So there's areas in general that we need to improve upon. Some of this is about depth, and some of this is going to be about just top end quality, and that's what the next sort of phase of things will need to be. Next year is going to have its own bear of a schedule, just because of the World Cup is going to take out a lot of weeks in the middle of it, which is going to jam games together, which means you got to have quality through your roster. So for this year, some guys who gained some experience are going to be able to provide us more depth and quality through our roster. We don't want to necessarily reset and try to start doing that with a new set of players. And then we're going to have, I think, a fair amount of new players who are going to come in that we're going to have to reintegrate into our group. And as of right now, we're already starting the reintegration of Ricky into our group and training and things like that. And you can already sense a different momentum in the group, and a different way of how he impacts the game. So, and I think we had a more stable second half of the year that gave us some things that we can think about as we go into the off season, and about what next year's group can look like, how we want to play, things like that. And Ricky plays such a big part of that because he's such a unique player, and how he impacts the game. And so we have to do that with the mindset of Ricky as being a focal point of that again, which we didn't have this year.
You mentioned the 3 nines and the 7 goals. You're bringing back, at least attempting to, 2/3 of that, right? Christian Ramirez has his contract extended, or new contract, however that worked. You're trying to bring Nasi back as well. At least that's what it says per the press release.
Sure.
Do you think that you need something different there if indeed
Yes.
2/3 of it come back? So it's a focus, the 9.
For sure. Each of our 9s brought something different to the group this year. Each of them has their skill set. What we know of our group and our team when healthy and while moving at the speed that we want to move and that Ricky is going to drive us, we need somebody who is just so ambitious to score goals and so hungry to score goals, and is ruthless in front of the net, and has that passion and desire to score and can get there. Right? Those are 2 different parts. There's guys who have it but can't get there, and then there's guys who don't have it and maybe can get there. You got to have somebody who can do that. And if we do, that person will get 15 to 20 goals because of the quality of the players around them and the capacity to set them up and I do firmly believe that. And I think it's something that we need desperately.
Hey, Greg. Since Ricky is back in training, what have been your early thoughts of him back into the group?
He's a phenomenal soccer player. I mean, just the second he gets on the field, the passes that he hits, the things that he sees, how he uses everybody around the field as pieces of the game is just so different. It's so different than anything that we had going on this year in the midfield. It's just it's unique, you know. I'll give you an example. We're playing a small-sided game. He was in the middle of the field. Our fullback on the right side starts to make a run, and Ricky hits a pass that probably on our team Ricky only hits outside of the foot behind the back line. It eliminates 2 or 3 defenders, and it just sets out in the space. And when the player runs onto it, all he has to do is tap it 5 yards into the goal. He's already seen what the whole action looks like before everyone else sees what the action. He plays it with a precision that only Ricky can. And the player just does the run, and all the work has already been done for him. Just get where you need to get to, and Ricky's going to put all the detail on it that you need. So just again, like, that's his soccer quality, right? He's still going to have to get back all the details and some of his movements and changes of directions and jumping through, 2 defenders when he's splitting them, and all those things are still going to keep taking steps. But just his mind for the game and what he sees is just different, right? It's different. It's some guys are playing the game when the ball arrives at their feet, and some guys already know what the next 3 plays look like before they even happen. And Ricky is a guy who already knows what the game looks like before it's even come in his space. He's already started to orchestrate the next 2 or 3 moves. And so you feel that inside of our group. And what does that do? It gives Gabe and Joe and these guys more confidence to just go because they know the ball is going to arrive or it's going to go. They're not waiting for it at their feet. They're not trying to play make. They're trying to now finish actions. And so you start to sense that it takes a little bit of the pressure off of some of those guys to feel like they have to do more because you can lay that onto Ricky's shoulders a little bit more than maybe they could during the course of the season. And you feel that tension kind of come out of the group right away. It's crazy to seem like it, and I wouldn't say Ricky's up to full speed by any stretch, but again, the trust that they have that he's going to see and play the balls that he needs to play gives them the faith and the trust to make the runs that they need to make, and everything just speeds up, if that makes sense. So it's interesting to see how quickly those things kind of fall in. There's a lot of work to do. I didn't talk about doing things on 11v11 yet on a big field, which is another aspect of it. It's just the sense of the game, the feel of the game, and the recognition of the moment that he has that's unique.
And once you give guys the break, going into after the end of the year, at the start of camp, you anticipate him being full bore 11-11
Yeah.
ready to go?
Yeah, the goal here is that before we leave this 3-week period, that Ricky, he will be full in. Not necessarily, don't know that we see him playing 11v11 and going in a big, but that he will be fully integrated in the training environment, defending, attacking, doing all the things. We hope that that's how these next 3 weeks finish. In which case, then he, if he can continue to make progress in the offseason, which he won't just shut it down, he's going to keep making progress, he should be ready to integrate fully into everything that we're doing upon return.
Do you have to pull him back a little bit in the offseason, do you think?
No, not really. I think we need to be mindful of where he's continuing his work and how he's going to continue his work. What Ricky doesn't need after having 8 months of not training or 9 months is to take another break. What he needs to do is continue to make progress in the right environment and the right surroundings. The one thing that he has here that's really beneficial is a bunch of players who understand where he's at, and so they're not going into these crazy challenges or tackles or things like that, right? It's a little bit of the NFL, the quarterback wears a different jersey than everybody else, and people are mindful of that. It's just making sure when now he goes a little more live, that the environment that he's going in is also aware of it, not like he's just any old guy that can be tackled in those ways. I think we just need to be mindful of that and keep allowing him to make progress with the expectation and assumption that when he arrives, he's going to be fully ready to go. And I think he's there. He's just, again, it's process as much as anything, steps.
Hey, Greg. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Mm-hmm.
We saw roster decisions come down today. So I guess the question is, how how much do you get involved in speaking with, Will and his team on that? Like who you would like to bring back? For example, you spoke glowingly about Diego Fagundes on a couple of occasions last year. His contract wasn't exercised. However, we know that the team is still in discussions with him. So I guess, do you have much input as it pertains to that? Or is it really a collaborative thing? Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely share my thoughts and opinions and on everybody and how I see them going into the future, how I see their performance over the course of the year, what we are investing in for the future and what we've assessed, by working with them in the past. Inside of that, there's also the dollars and cents of it all and how you put a team together, because in our league, we know we have a limited amount of roster spots. You have 20 who are guys who are fit on the budget. So you have that. Then you have off budget players, which are a separate category. So, and then within that, you have cap things. So everybody has their piece of the pie inside of all of that. That's a whole nother, obviously we know this, it's a budget, right? It's a salary cap. So inside of that, you're always trying to determine, and then the best way you can is you want your best players to be, in general, the guys who are maybe taking up a little bit more and the guys who are coming along and so forth, so on and so forth. So yes, there's a technical aspect to it always, and then you're trying, I think for Will and the group, it's also trying to fit the financial part of it and how we want to improve as a group and what that's going to cost us or what that's going to look like, how we're going to do that. So there's always, and I think this is MLS, as we know, there's always that fine line between how do you get better and improve at the high end? How do you to improve depth? Where is your money allocated into these different positions? You have obviously your 3 DPs, and then you have your youth fund players who slightly fit in different categories because they're fixed budget numbers. So there's all these different. You know this. Everybody knows this. So just trying to figure. Like I love Diego. I think he was a great part of our team. If there's a spot for him in the future, I would love to have him in the group. And I think that's also for Diego to decide. He's a free agent. He also needs to decide what's best for him and where, and what works for him. So that's where the collaboration and the communication will come. So I'm definitely involved in sharing all of that, my feelings on all of that stuff. And then we try to fit the pieces together.
In 2023, the team conceded 67 goals. It led to a lot of change in the back line. This year, 66 conceded. Might we see a different Galaxy back line next year? Thank you.
You will see there will be changes in the back line. There will be adjustments and changes for sure. It's part of the process. It's you get there because we need to. We can't give up 66 goals. So there will be something that occurs that will help us to continue to grow and evolve in a lot of different areas of the field, and the back group and the defensive group. Defending is from front to back, let's be honest, but definitely there will be some adjustment inside of that. I think you have to. If you give up 66 goals and you don't, then you're not addressing an issue.
How fully integrated is Ricky in training right now?
He is in everything. But he's on the attacking side. He's as a neutral, so he's not in the defensive, like tackling and defensive situations. So he's neutral, which also allows us to kind of put him in a different jersey, so guys are mindful of him. But he's doing everything else.
He's been out on the field for what a couple months now.
Yeah.
Is in terms of working with the team itself. When did that start?
Probably about a month ago, 3-4 weeks ago. Like there's phases. So for us in what we call return to play, there are different steps, right? There's in our training sessions, you have warm up, and then you have a lot of technical work at times. Then you have warm up, technical work, and something that we often call an activation, which is small sided. They're possessions, rondos, different things like that. Then we get into tactical stuff. Then we have games that we might play. So there's a lot of different layers in training. And so within that, our guys who are returned to play might have involvement in certain parts of training, but not all of training, right? They will come in and reintegrate usually as just a neutral or an attacking player, so that they're not into the defensive reactionary types of things, and that's a first phase in, and then they become more live, and then so there's lots of different steps that you take over the course of for Ricky, those processes were longer. For guys that are coming off shorter injuries, that could be one day here, one day there, and then you're in live again, right? So it kind of matches the duration you're out is kind of the time that you spend in these different phases of the return to play, is kind of, so to speak. So he was spending a lot of time doing work individually off the field with doing specific things that he needed to do with a trainer, ball oriented. Some stuff was just physical. Then there was integration of more technical stuff with more players, putting him through more actions that he does that are more specific to what he does in the game, to that getting more and more specific towards what it looks like for him in live action.
Who was he working with primarily before he really integrated with him?
It started off with Adam doing a lot of the physical work and the initial ball work, and then it kind of transitions over to working with Nick Desloff, who does a lot of our technical work and does a lot of detail. So when you talk about like specific scenarios in the game that you see Ricky doing when he's at his best, it's you recreate those models on the field and those movements, even though there's not defenders everywhere, and he's having to do those movements. So it's like, hey, these are things that you were doing when you were healthy and everything else. Here's that action. Let's build the speed. These movements are there, but it doesn't have the chaos, let's say, of and the reaction of having defenders and different things there. So it's very controlled, but he's doing the movements that he does in the game. Does that make sense? Gain confidence, gain strength, gain all the things you have. Then we start to add defensive pieces into it, and those defenders initially, when he's with Nick, become let's say 50%, 30%, some other where they are giving him something, but they're not going in on him, but they're giving him some resistance and something to move for, and it just gradually takes steps to becoming more and more live, more and more real. So now he's real, he's live inside the game. Guys are obviously mindful of him, but he's doing things at game speed now. He isn't defending, and he's not obviously tackling and having to do all that yet, but he's doing all the other stuff at a live speed.
And how long has he been in that mode?
That mode really for this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is there a chance, and if so, what would determine it, that he could be on the field against America?
Limited chance, okay. and I think it would be. He will not put down enough real live defending and attacking situations and body of work that it would probably make sense for him.
Okay. The coming back from major injuries, coming back from an ACL injury, it often takes time once you're on the field
Sure.
to get back to where you are. How confident are you that we can see the best of Ricky next year, and do you feel like you have a timeline in your mind for that?
I think given the length of time that we've had to be able to build him up and not try to rush him out there, I think that will help him ultimately as he reintegrates into it. And I say that because we can control the intensity, the speed, the duration, the volume, all those kinds of things that a lot of guys, when they're coming back, because the season's going and they're trying to get back and they're trying to immediately get out there, you see a lot of guys get re-injured again. There's the risk of re-injury, not necessarily a knee, but could be hamstring, could be this, could be that. A lot of it's because of compensation, and a lot of it because guys are coming back so fast. I think because we win a little extra time in this process and we can take our steps a little bit longer, my hope and my optimistic side is that you're going to see a quicker reintegration, because he's going to have a longer duration of going through the necessary steps to be at his best. And we can take our time and look, okay, there's a little bit of a deficiency of pushing off of here to here. Let's make sure we take him through those moments a little more controlled, and then build him up into being more reactive. And so we can be a little more patient, and I think from what I see from him out there, like, again, his brain is functioning really well, like his technique really well. So now it is just getting the confidence and those physical actions to reactive, sharp, those things like that. And I think that will come with just repetition now in that type of environment. And so I am really optimistic that pretty quickly we'll see a good but gradually progressive version of Ricky. I think he'll come out of the gates looking solid, really solid.
And lastly, as you look back on the season, and especially look back on early on in the season, What did you learn this year? What in dealing with the challenges that were unique and having to rebuild the midfield and the way that impacted every other line? Are there things you look back on and say, maybe if I had done this, and lessons that came from that, or are there just lessons that this was probably you've had some interesting years as a head
Sure.
coach.
They're all different. Every year is different. No matter what you say, they're all different.
And this had to be one of the most interesting ones you've had.
Yeah, it was. The way you look at every season, or I look at every season, is when you build a roster, you have all of your pieces of your puzzle, your roster puzzle. They have strengths, they have weaknesses, they have things they're really good at, things that they're really comfortable with, and it's how the sum of those pieces fit together to make your team, especially with the way we play, because it's so interactive in the way that we go about playing our game. And we talked a lot about in 2023, when we're coming out of it, we were talking a lot about having the balance of space creators and space users, right? Guys who are running behind to create spaces for the guys like Ricky, to be able to get on the ball, change the speed in between the lines, do all those things, and then for him to have runners into the depth. So it's always trying to find the balance inside of that. So I think the principles of what we want to do in building the team and what we're looking for from the team always exist. The question is, based on coming out of last year and into this year, what did we lose and what did we gain in that process? And then for our midfield, it's such a cerebral part of our system. And we lost a lot of experience and brain power and know-how in our midfield. So there was a few things that I felt like I was trying to find the right resolution to, which is without a Joe on the field and without having a really dynamic striker at the early part of it, because Christian is a good player, but he's not a stretcher, right? He's a guy who you're playing off of, and he's that. Gabe became the only guy who was a stretcher, but Gabe also was feeling the need to have to play make a little bit because you don't have a Ricky. So now you've lost your stretch, and you don't have Gabe doing this. So I'm constantly trying to get back to finding the balance inside of our group that can bring out the things that the group is about and the principles that we're about and the way we want to play the game. I think what people start to talk about is like, well, then you got to change the way you play. Okay, but if the pieces are going to come back, do you change the way you play for a short term, whatever, or do you want to stick to, on some level, who you're going to be and is going to help you be successful once, and I'm not talking about just Ricky, I mean even Joe coming back, even some of the other pieces that were going to evolve, because I don't think we would have been good at the other way of playing. Does that make sense? Like, we could have gone and tried to go really direct and bypass the midfield, not put so much stress on. I actually don't think we have the pieces to do that either. And so the question for me was like, do you keep doing what you're doing because the roster is ultimately built to do the things you want to do, even though the pieces aren't there at the moment? Or do you switch your vision for how you want to play to try to fit, I don't think it fits this roster either. So it becomes, for me, it became a stick to your principles, stick to your guns, stick to the way you envision in this group playing the way they want to play, and trust that the process, you're going to come out of it. And I think we did that. I do think that to a certain degree, we suffered in the first part of the season, sometimes sticking to things that weren't fully coming to fruition. But I do think it kept the group consistently understanding what we wanted to do so that they weren't confused. Because I think you run a risk with as a coach going, we're going to scrap what we've worked on the last 2 years, 3 years with guys, and we're going to go with something different just for you guys now. And then we're going to come back to it when we get these guys, and they're going to go, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're all over the shop, right? And so I think as a coach, you run a fine line between creating continuity and consistency so that everybody understands what their role is and what their part is in the team, and fighting just for that one result, right, or that two results. And for me, that was a learning sort of thing. And I can tell you in different parts of my career, especially if you go back to Chivas days when I was working with Robin, we were told in that time period, we were defending really well and we were just grinding out results and we were staying in the playoff. And we were told, if you don't get out of playing this really defensive style, you guys won't be here again. You won't be here next year anyways. So then you try to become a more attacking team, and we didn't win a game. We weren't even close. We were getting our asses handed to us every game because it was what the team couldn't do it. Like, it wasn't who they were, right? So you got to know who you are. You got to stick to your guns in a certain way, bring players along. And I think that was a big part of this year. I adapted, and I think I've said this to you, I adapted the way that I was training the group. Last year we had a much more experienced group who we could do and teach inside of the flow of the game a little bit more. And with this group, with some younger guys and different things, I said, okay, this group isn't coming along that way. I need to slow down, do scenarios, be more specific with these younger guys, really work. Here's the scenario, here's the solutions, here's what you need to be thinking about. And we switched, probably 15, 14 games in, how I was working with the group. The veteran guys are going, this is a little bit slower paced. This isn't it's not that fun for those guys who are there. But to get the group to get on the same page, I felt like we needed to do it. So I evolved a little bit of my approach with the group as well. And it's what I felt like the team needed. And every team can be a little bit different. And that's the thing that I think I had to go through with this group. And at the beginning of the year, we're playing so many games. We're traveling a lot. I think we were relying probably on more minutes from less guys at certain parts of the season. So then you're trying to manage workloads during the week to have guys fresh to show up to the next game. There was a lot of variables. And every one of these are different, and you try to take away your points that you can learn. And along the way, I will encounter some of these moments again and have to reflect on my learning and our learning from the times we went through it. Does that make sense? And so, I can't go into next year thinking it's going to be like this year, and it's not going to be like 2024. Next year will be its own journey and have its own challenges, and you have to to evolve with that group, next year's group. But the more consistent you can be, then with your group, the more you know the group, and you know exactly what they need, and you know exactly how it's going to look. And so, there's some importance in that. Yep.
Hi, Greg.
Hey, Ryan.
I just have one question for you that I didn't get to when we spoke last week on Soccer in 60, and that's about a specific player, and that being Chris Rindolph.
Yeah.
You gave him a few opportunities over the course of the season, and I wonder if my instincts are right here. To me, he seemed very mature and calm on the field, as well as also in speaking to him. I wonder if you're seeing a forward trajectory for him with what you've seen already, and if you feel that will continue, and what kind of progress has he made?
Yeah, I think first to answer your question, your instincts are right. He is, in some aspects, he's a younger player or a younger center back, but he is an old soul. Even the way he approaches the game, he is extremely, and I said this about him, he is very professional. He'll be one of the first guys in, one of the last guys out. He's very routine oriented. It's interesting for you guys if you're ever here before the game and you'll see him go out and he walks through and he visualizes, and he's professional. Like, that's for real. Like, he takes his job serious, and he understands his responsibility to the team. And a big part of being a center back is just not making mistakes. It's about keeping things clean. It's about protecting your goal. It's about recognizing when the ball needs to go up to the 50th row and maybe you don't need to take chances in here. And his decisions are mature, and he's calm about it. He's rarely do you see him, flustered in a situation or anything. He's just been really stable. And I watched, because I watch every single one of the second team games. If they're home games, I'm always there. And he was the same guy in that for that team the whole first half of the season. It's not surprising that when he left and started to come with us, they also started to struggle a little bit for results, because the stability of the line gets challenged by the guy who's creating stability in the line. So for us, he didn't necessarily need to be the stabilizer. He just needed to be just a good, solid, good decisions, no glowing, ridiculous mistakes. Just keep it nice and clean and simple, and he has a great mindset for that. And he's an eager learner. He wants to learn new things, which you want in a young center back. He has I think the center back position, because a lot of it is about game reading. It is about composure, and it is about reading the situation as it's coming to you, and then choosing the right solution or decision. Am I stepping in to win this ball? Am I winning time? Am I doing all of these things? You need somebody who isn't emotionally all over the place, or creating a set of, let's say, constraints on themselves, and having the open-mindedness that any solution is a solution, and I'm willing to use whatever's best in this moment. And sometimes you see players will create personal constraints on themselves, whereas, I don't know if I have the legs to chase this one down, so then I'm going to choose this decision when this might be better for the group. Like, I'm not saying that of our guys. I'm just saying you get guys who create constraints on themselves, which change the picture. Does that make sense? And Chris has done a really nice job of being predictable, being clear about what he's wanting to do, doing it with composure. He still has a lot of learning to do, and he still has a lot of upside. And there's times when we want him to be a little more aggressive in certain situations. There's time when we think he can win time in a few more situations. But we know he's an eager learner, and that there's a foundation of consistency there to build off of. And I think that's the center back position. It's about consistency, and it's about reliability. And then you have a guy like Amiro who has incredible physical aspects of his game, and he can be an eraser and he can do certain things. And for us is to get Amiro into doing some of those more consistent reading types of things and using his incredible athleticism as only if I need it will I pull it out, but I don't have to need it because my decision making is so good, right? So they're almost like opposite ends of the spectrums and so it's how those pieces fit together in our back line, because for me, a back line is a line. It's not about the individual parts. It's about the collective and how they fit with one another. So Chris has done a great job to put himself in the core of center backs that will be back next year. And a guy that we see has some real reliable minutes in front of him, and we'll see how many of those minutes, how many that means for him. But he has certainly done the job to create confidence in the staff and in the team that he's a guy who can help us. Yeah.
Greg, you had to let go with Diego, and obviously maybe he could be back, but Eric Zabaleta was also one of those guys. Miguel Berry was also one of those guys. Speaking specifically on Eric and Diego, both of those guys are senior leadership on your club. You've talked about losing Brugman and maybe Joveljic or some of the senior leadership that you had, or Mark Delgado last year sort of put you guys on a hold. Is there some hesitation knowing that maybe you're losing more of that senior leadership, and how do you backfill that if that's the case?
Yeah, I think the locker room, how a locker room functions, where its core leadership group it's vital. So we'll see what the offseason has for some of the guys you mentioned, obviously. But I think those are two big important parts. Like the amount of minutes that, for example, that Diego played this year were enormous, but also his connection to the guys, his leadership in the locker room, his presence of knowing the league and everything else was huge for us. On the other side of it is a guy like Eric who didn't play a ton of minutes, but he had the same type of value inside of the locker room, inside of the team. On the training day when he was on the other team, let's call it the second team, he created a standard and an expectation of that group, always communicating, always organizing. Like, you have to have that guy, right? Like in 2017, for us, it was Jason Hernandez in our group. This guy, he didn't play a ton of minutes. He played in 10 games, 10 wins. The day after the game, he set the standard for everybody that they had to play at the level it was necessary. Jason was a little bit older veteran at the time, but he was such a vital part to the success of that group. And he wasn't the guy that everybody in the, whether it's the media or everyone else, would pick out. Eric has that kind of influence on the group. They look at him as a leader, as almost an extension of the coaching staff in a way, because he's been around so long and he's helping he has those instincts. His dad was a coach. His uncle was a coach. He has the instincts. And so he was a great leader in the group. How we're going to backfill that is, it's an important question, and I think it's something that we're always looking at and talking about, because I don't believe in any one perfect leader for a group. I think you have emotional leaders. I think you have locker room leaders. I think you have guys who are just connectors, and you have a lot of other leadership roles that fit inside of a team, and no one guy does all of those. You have leader by example guys who help set a standard, and you have a lot of different parts of that. So we have to be thinking about that. And those are two guys who played a big role in the locker room for us. And we probably needed more, to be honest. But those were two guys that played a big role for us.
Hey, Greg, you expect your staff to be back as is? You got to be together forever, so I assume.
I do, yeah, I do. We'll see what the rest of that it looks. I think we want to keep evolving inside of some of the different things that we're doing, but I definitely think that our group will be back.
And then just one of all the kids that took big steps, Harbor,
Yep.
Cuevas, and all that. What's next for Ruben Ramos? You think?
Yeah, look, Ruben had a little bit of a tough season because he got started off this year, I think, in a pretty good rhythm and a flow, and then he had I think it was an ankle injury or something that had him out for a decent chunk of the year. And then as he was coming back, I think we spent a lot of time trying to get Ruben back up to like real high intensity running and real high intensity actions. And I feel like it's taken him a little while to get back into that. I think some of it is positional because when he was down and he's playing minutes with the second team, sometimes he's playing as in the 9 role. He's not really a 9, and so I think he's playing back to goal a little bit in that team and needs to be facing forward and running direct. And so I think he's a kid with a lot of upside. I think I hope he's here next year in a way that we can keep pushing him forward and getting the most out of him. But he's going to be fine. I think he just had an up and down year because he had a bad injury in the middle of it that it took him a while to get going. And then when you have your first big injury, how you come back out of that and recatch the sharp part of your game is something he had to go through this year. So, but he's a versatile player. He can play some different roles as an attacker, but ultimately we want to get Ruben facing forward and moving forward and getting him facing the goal because he's a good finisher. He didn't get those scenarios as often as I would have liked this year, and at the intensity level that we need him to be at. He looks better in the training sessions now. As again we're starting to pick things up again, and he's starting to do that. And so, we'll see. But he needs to make a step to start getting some minutes at the first team level in order to really make the big jump that he's probably capable of doing.
Go ahead, Scott, but we'll probably make this the last question.
Is Eric somebody that you're going to look to try to bring back? Do you see him possibly being back next season?
We'll see. I think, I'll be candid. He and I have had conversations. It's a tough role. Like, it's not something I could have done, if I'm being honest with you. Like, I retired when I was 34, and I wasn't probably going to be the everyday starter. And I was like, yeah, I can't be the guy who doesn't play many minutes to be the rah-rah guy in the locker room. That's just, I knew I was going to coaching, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So, for him, I think you have a sense of your role, which is probably going to be less than 500 minutes. You're going to be training every day and stay positive and keep guys. It's not an easy role for guys. And so I think you really have to, if it's something you want to do, your mindset has to really be in it, and you have to be really committed to it. I do think he will want to go into coaching, based on our discussions. So it is a little bit of a hybrid type of role where you can start to pick up on some of that knowledge and start to move into that. So it's a conversation that we're having, but it's also going to affect the larger roster build and where we're at. But it's a really kind of specific potential role, and I think everybody has to be on the same page when you do stuff like that. So he and I have had really good conversations, as you can imagine, about all of that and what that entails and looks like and stuff like that. So
Could he come into the staff, whether it's first team or the greater staff?
it's possible, yeah, it's possible for sure. But, again, it's been a great asset to the organization in many different levels, and so those are all possibilities are on the table, nothing off the table. So. Yeah.
Greg, thank you so much for your
Okay.
time. We'll see you on November 15th.
Thanks, everybody.
Otherwise,
Have a
we'll see
great-
you next year.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.